Hey everyone, it's Nighthorror here, and today in this video, what I'm going to do, I brought help, guys. I want to help you understand and figure out for yourself, or give you something really good to copy for raid group composition. Now, as always in all of my videos, I explain the why and the how, and give you the details so that you can have the knowledge to feel a lot more confident, but two, to be able to make decisions for yourself, to be able to think for yourself and decide if something makes sense for your group. Because going through every single combination and what have you and not understanding why you're doing it, it's not going to be very helpful for you. It's going to leave you confused, and I don't want to do that at all. So we're going to walk through it. If you're not interested in that, if you don't need that kind of information, well, one, you've already probably clicked off the video, but two, you can skip ahead if you want to see the particular sets and everything that I recommend. Just please don't skip this part and then ask me questions down in the comments below. Please watch the whole thing. I'll try to be brief. Okay, so where do we start when figuring out a raid composition? Well, we actually start with penetration and with critical damage. Why do we do that? Because these are the two things that are most important to doing damage. Penetration affects what I would call your white damage, kind of your base damage, right? And if you decrease your base damage by not being at penetration cap, so the enemy has a lot of resistances, all of our buffs and everything else that we stack on top of that are also likewise affected greatly by that. So that's why one of the reasons why penetration is so important is it's how we get that max damage. Similarly, critical damage kind of falls into the same category, where it's almost always better to get more critical damage if you can, up to the cap, and it's almost always better to have the trade-offs for that. Now, what you'll see with both of these things is there's a cap. They're so good, they're so important, that there's actually a cap to where they stop being effective at all. So we want to make sure we get up to that cap, but not over, because that's just wasting all of that extra critical or penetration. Now, moving into this, let's actually walk through, and I'm going to talk about two different situations. And hopefully, most groups will probably be somewhere in between, but I want to talk through two different situations kind of at the extremes, and then you can decide for yourself where your particular group is at. Okay, so first off, we're in a PUG. Okay, you're throwing together a group, you don't know what everybody's bringing, but you want to try to optimize kind of as best as you can. Or maybe you're in a very casual group where you don't have a lot of requirements on people, and it's maybe not quite a PUG, but it's very similar vibes where like bring whatever you want. Well, what are we going to do? Well, first up here is major and minor breach. This should always be supplied by the tank. This has long been the tank's domain to bring major and minor breach to the group. Historically, how they've done that is with pierce armor. A lot of tanks now really like the shield throw. And hey, I don't blame you. It's really fun, okay? It's really fun, and it can have some benefits to it, or maybe a lot of benefits, depending on how you look at things. The thing is, that's totally fine. I totally get it. I mean, being Captain America, throwing the shield, it's really fun. It's not my favorite taunt in the world because it's really expensive in stam and other reasons, but it's still totally fine. Totally get it. If you are doing that, you still need to find a way to bring major and minor breach, okay? And that is outside of the scope of this video, but the tank needs to be providing this, and raid leads probably need to be checking to make sure they have it. LE-sus with an ice wall on your back bar is probably the easiest and probably the best way to do it, which will also provide minor brittle. I'm not going to go into the details of that. Hopefully you understand that. If you don't, come to the Discord, ask some questions. We can help you out there. All right, next up, infused crusher enchant, two-handed on the back bar, also the tank's domain. So we're getting extra penetration there. There's nothing better to run. No reason not to run this. It should be in your group pretty much any time. Next up here, we got Alkosh, we got Crimson O, Tremor Skill, all kinds of other stuff. We're going to skip that for now, okay? We're in a PUG. We'll come back and talk about it. Piercing. This is a passive. It's not a slottable CP, so everybody should generally have it. One piece of light armor, that's what I recommend right now. We'll take a look at the math, and we'll see where we're at. Okay, where are we at? Well, we're pretty far under. We're missing a little over 5,000, almost, 5,500, I guess, penetration. So what are we going to do? Well, one of the things I'll tell you is that some of our sets have opened up recently, so it makes a lot of sense for the main tank, or at least one of the tanks, to run Crimson Oath's Arrive. It's a really easy to proc set, procs in an AoE on several targets, works great. It's a go-to there. Hey guys, let me interrupt here. If you like what you're seeing, if you like what is up on the screen, guys, these kinds of videos are incredibly niche, but I know that they're very helpful for people, and so that's why we do them. I want to help provide tools, but help me out. Help me, allow me to continue to create great videos like this by first off liking and subscribing, sure, but also share the video with anybody you think you could find helpful. Also, all of the tools that we've created and everything else, because if these videos don't get a lot of views, I can't keep doing them. them. I do them because I want to help out the community, and it's, you know, I want to do stuff like that, right? Just because I know it's a small group, but it's a hardcore group. And if you really like it, if you really like what you see, consider becoming a channel member. You can support the channel directly, and it starts for just $1 a month. Okay, I'm not the only one who works on all of this stuff now, so there's more people on the payroll. So I'd really appreciate it if you could do anything to help. But again, just sharing would be a huge help. All right, back to the rest of the video. The next thing, if you have an Arcanist tank and they are running Runic Sunder, which honestly, I love Runic Sunder on an Arcanist. Anytime I take that build, I run Runic Sunder, and you take that as well, on your target, whoever they're taunting, you're at penetration cap now. There's literally nothing else you need to do. Nobody needs to bring extra sources of penetration. You don't need Alkosh anymore. You don't even need Tremor Scale. Now, if you don't have Runic Sunder because you don't know what your tanks bring or whatever, you can ask them to run Tremor Scale. Tremor Scale has to be, again, the same as Runic Sunder, the target they taunt, and we can see, again, that we're over on penetration. Some combination of those two things is what I recommend for most PUG groups. And again, personally, I like Runic Sunder quite a bit. Now, if you're in a more optimal group, Velothi Urmage Amulet, a lot of people are going to be wearing this, but if they're using Rakat's Void Mantle for a heavy attack or any number of other setups, they might not be wearing this. We also have, Valken Scoria, Kagranax. This is situationally, you could put this on if you need another source of penetration. That's probably going to be not necessarily in an ideal or optimized situation, but it could be for portals or any number of other situations. So we put it there for you. Penetration sets, okay? So we have listed here, if you mouse over, we got a handful of the most popular penetration sets. So Onsel's Torment, for example, is on there. Zogfin's Warband, Tideborn Windstalker, the new crafted set, Reliquin. So you can put in if you have one of these guys. And if you said Velothi Urmage Amulet, and then you also had something like Onsel's Torment, which is what I'd recommend as kind of a general setup for just about everybody, you're looking really good. I mean, we have a ton right here. And then if you're also running a meta setup, you're going to have at least 2 skills from Herald of the Tome on your ability. So you're going to have your flail, and then you're going to have your beam. So there you go. You got a couple there. And if you have, you can see now we're way over, right? So we'd probably, first thing I'd recommend taking off is Tremor Scale, because this is the target you have to taunt, and Crimson Oath will still work in an AoE, which is really nice. But we actually see, well, we're kind of over on that, so we could honestly drop that. And even if we just have 2 sets of penetration here, we're basically at pen cap. We're missing just a little bit. We're pretty much there, though. So this could be a situation you could run it in your groups. I think most groups, though, are going to run Crimson Oath Thrive, and you're just going to be over, and you don't know if somebody's running Velothi. You don't know if they're running a penetration set, but, if they're running a beam, they're still going to be quite well over. Okay, so that's the setup here with penetration. We got 2 setups there. The one is a little bit more meta, which is what we have here, and the other one is like a complete PUG where you basically slot Tremor Scale is the solution there. And you can see Tremor Scale provides 2,500 and Herald of the Tomb 2,400. Okay, so there's some symmetry there, or at least close to it. So if you don't have meta setups, then run Tremor Scale. If you do have meta setups, then you can skip it, and you're fine. You're over. Okay, now let's look over at crit damage. So Major Force. Historically, we were always trying to get this. Okay. And it's kind of hard. It's difficult. You got to handle ulti rotations. You got to have a lot of ultimate, what have you. Things have changed now. Pillager's Prophet is basically, dead. It's dead to me. I'll say that. It's not quite dead. Some people are still using it. That's fine. For me, I'm not using it, and I'm not going to put it in my group comps anymore. I just don't think it's worth it. We could talk about that more in a minute. But let's start off here with Minor Brittle. Minor Brittle we should absolutely have. There's several sources of this. Like I said, Elisus with someone in an Ice Wall of Elements is going to do just fine. Lucent Echoes. It's a great set. Provides us with crit. It's also survivable for our main tank, so we'd put that on them. If we are in a PUG, well, actually, maybe we'll circle back to this, actually. Let's wait. So we're running 6 pieces of medium. I think that's the way to go right now, so I recommend it. Minor Force. Minor Force has long been something that DPS source themselves. Tons and tons of places to get this, but you're kind of expected to bring it, okay? We're not going to be running Axes. Shadow Mundus we're not running, and then we've got a whole bunch of skill lines here that we can get various amounts from, okay? So again, if we're in the situation where we're running meta setups, Herald of the Tome, Assassination is gonna be the way to go. And then a lot of groups, mine included, are often running Adric Spear. And if you do this, you see that, hey, we're golden. We're 127. The cap is 125. We're good. So there's really nothing else you need to do here. You're golden. If you're not with meta setups, if you don't know what people are bringing, okay, I recommend running elemental catalyst with at least two pieces or two types of damage you're doing. You're going to do ice with your wall on your back bar, and then figure out a way to do either lightning or fire, probably fire with Mage's Guild Ruin. You really want a dot for this, by the way. You don't want any kind of direct damage. You really want a dot that keeps on the target, and that gives us an extra 10%. We're still quite below. Now, should we add in Major Force, and that would be a way to go? It's absolutely a way to go, but I think if you're in a group that is this unoptimized and unorganized, the chances that you're keeping up Major Force uptimes, even if you put on Saxhleel, are incredibly low. And I just don't think it honestly makes sense to me. So in this situation, you're quite low. If you have some source, hopefully somebody took at least one of these skill lines, although I'm sure there's a very good PUG setup that does not have any of them. But for the most part, hopefully you have at least one. You can also slot Fighting Finesse, which will give you 8% extra critical. Backstabber as well if you can get behind your target. And that puts you pretty close to the critical cap here. Now, other things you can do, Minor Brittle, Nunatech, this is much too hard to keep up in the average group. So that's, and your average PUG group for sure. So that's not going to work. Hopefully someone sources, so they're going to have to slot their own CP here. And, you know, you got to find some source from one of these skill lines is basically what you're at, or you're just going to be under cap a little bit. And, you know, in a PUG, that often just happens. The main thing is I would worry about as a raid lead is like, what can you do? And sure, you can, you know, you'll be horning, so you'll have Major Force some of the time, and that'll help a lot. But I wouldn't try, if you're hurting cats already, I wouldn't try to keep up Major Force via Saxhleel. I just don't think it's worth it anymore. I think ideally people are running a little bit closer to meta setups, at least something to provide them at least one line of critical here. Because even if you only have one of these, maybe Assassination only providing 10%, then you're going to easily be able to get over cap. A note here on the CP, and I know I'm going a bit into minutia, but I want you guys to understand this. Your average CP provides you with about 3% of damage. Now, Exploiter in certain situations can provide more than that, but your average CP, slottable CP, provides you with 3% damage. If you consider that if you're under critical cap, and this is increasing your critical damage by 10%. And anytime I critical, I get an extra 10% damage. Okay, great. I can figure that in math. But how often do I critical? Well, you can check. In a trial, it's at least going to be 60%, okay? So about 60% of the time, we do an extra 10% damage. So if we multiply the expected value of our critical, the average, we're going to average, 6% of the time, we're going to get a critical. 10%, it's going to do 10% extra damage, and we see that we multiply these two together, and we're going to find that we get 6% increased damage effectively, right? It's more when critical, but it's less when we don't. So, or the same when you don't. So you're effectively getting a 6% increase in damage. Okay, that is twice as much as the 3% that we normally get from slottable CP. So that is why it's so important that you want to slot the CP whenever you are below cap. Okay, so if you're in a PUG or something and you're not at critical cap, you really want to slot these, or if you're in a build that is not really taking advantage. Now, if we don't have to, then that extra 3% is just icing on the cake. We don't have to do anything for it, and it's great, right? So that's kind of the situation there. Okay, now, again, let's go ahead and move back to a semi-organized group. So I am recommending EC in an unorganized group, but let's say we've at least got a couple of these, okay? So we should at least be at like 115, and if we slot Adric Spear in an optimized group, we're at 127, we're at cap, we're good. Maybe you want to offer a little bit of flexibility to your group. Maybe you want them to run a different skill line for the third skill line. Maybe you want to give them a little bit of flexibility. I just recommend running EC here, okay? I think that's the way to go. All right. Now that we've kind of understood that, we understand how to get to critical cap, we understand how to get to penetration cap, let's actually look at a roster here. Oh, and a really important note, I'm sure some of you are wondering and want to ask, can you find this? Guys, I will link this in the video below. This is something created by Luna for us here on the channel. Luna's working with us, and Daedric as well, and you guys can get this for yourself. It's in Google Sheets, so anybody can access it with an internet connection, play with it, do whatever you want with it. There's features that we might add. If you have any questions or you'd like anything, just drop it down in the comments below. We can maybe add it to it. Another really great tool, and we're looking at integrating both of these together. They don't quite integrate yet, we'll jump over here is to our roster tool. Now, I know many of you guys out there have already seen this roster tool, but if you haven't, it's pretty amazing, okay? Luna has done a video. Again, I'll link it down below. The other place to find these guys, so you don't have to just come back to this video. We're going to have these up on the website. We'll have a tools section in the very near future. It's not up there yet. Give us a couple of days after the video goes live, maybe a week, and it's going to say like tools or something, and you'll be able to look and find all of the tools here that we're providing for you on the channel. So this roster tool here has a lot of things going on. You can set up different bosses and whatever. It's more than most people need. What I personally use it for, because I'm usually setting up kind of generic groups where I'm not switching setups between each boss and what have you, is I usually just start on the trash section, honestly. And you can assign here a base class if you'd like for various people, although you don't need to. And again, I try personally with my groups to not go too in-depth with this, right? I try not to choose every single class skill line for them unless I'm in a really sweaty group doing very hard content. And for us to be able to clear easily, everybody really needs to be doing the thing that is the best, right? If the group is really experienced and can easily clear whatever content we're doing, that matters a lot less, right? So if you're doing normal veteran trials and the group can get through them, you don't need to pick every single, skill line everybody's doing. At least I don't think so. It depends on your group, depends on what you want to do. But this sheet here, what you can do is you click this, see it says copy from sheets. And if you copy this cell and paste it into Discord, it'll actually paste out a roster formatted in a format that Discord will like based on all of the choices you had here. Pretty amazing stuff. All right, guys, now if we go to the optimization checklist, and there's a couple things we're going to notice on here that we may or may not have. One of them is going to be minor courage. If we don't have minor courage, where do we get it from? Well, in theory, everybody should just be running this on their banner now. There are other ways of getting the crits by drinking potions. There's not really a good healing skill, even a spell-crafted skill that's going to provide good minor courage uptimes for everybody. And so I really think that it should be on the banner for just about everybody in group. And if you have a couple of those, it should cover everybody in group just fine. And I just think that makes the most sense. Some people are like, well, where do I get my minor crit from? You just run weapon or spell power potions. What about minor heroism? Well, for 99.99% of groups, if you're not dropping your ultimate right when you get it, minor heroism is probably not doing that much for you, okay? And also, it's just not that much just to begin with. If you're in a really sweaty group or if you really care about it a lot, drink heroism potions, you'll be just fine. Depending on your setup, you can slot Camo Hunter as well. And again, minor courage just makes the most sense to do here. And if you're in a PUG, you're in a PUG. It just happens. You're not going to be fully optimized there. Other than that, missing Osis onto the Infernal, I don't think it's that big of a deal. The resistances here are nice, but we live without it for a very long time, and I don't really think we need it in most situations, although you might want to throw it on if you're really worried about safety. Zens obviously want to have. Pillager's Prophet, while it could be a nice set to throw on, it would be fine to run in one of the flex spots. I just don't think it's the same problem, especially for most PUGs, and even in organized groups, you're not utilizing your ultimate that often and that optimally. And, sure, it could be the difference between getting an ulti back in a particular situation or not, but it could also not matter. So I just think it's one of those lower priority things, and making sure you have all these other buffs. Damage has already gone up so much, guys. It's gone up so much. So making things simpler and easier, I think, is really the way to help increase damage for most groups, is by just keeping things simpler and helping you get through content. That's just my 2 pennies. Someone else might disagree, and that's totally fine. I do think it's somewhat a matter of opinion here. All right, now let's actually look, and guys, I'm going to pop up here and I'm going to show you my kind of cheat sheet. But if you want the version of this from the sheets, and so you can copy and paste it into Discord and everything else, again, it'll be linked below. This specific setups that I'm showing you today will be linked for you below, so you can just copy and paste them if you'd like and change things as you would like, tweak them however you want. But for now, let's actually just look at my trial composition card here. I call these cards, so you can kind of see in a little bit more simple format what I'm recommending. All right, so first off, let's start off with a PUG group, right? Lucent Echoes, we already talked about that. That's going to provide us with a little bit extra crit and some survivability for our tank when they get to low health. Crimson Oaths Thrive. We need extra penetration, especially for our PUG group. We already talked about that. If you need Tremor Scale, here it is. Put it on your main tank. Tremor Scale only works on the target you're taunting, so it needs to be on whoever is taunting things, usually most importantly being on your main tank. Could also need to be on your off tank depending on the situation, if you're trying to get abominations down on Basai, stuff like that. And then we're running a horn on our main tank here. We're running Earth and Heart as the only skill line that we really want, and the reason for that is igneous weapons. We need to make sure we have igneous weapons. If they're really sweaty, they can also stagger from that skill line, but that's what we want there. For our OT, Pearlescent Ward, we want a trial set on each one of our tanks because it provides a line of minor Aegis, which reduces their damage taken. So that's why we split up the 2 trial sets, putting LE on one, Pearlescent Ward on the other. And then after that, again, in a PUG situation, we want Elemental Catalyst. Only need 2 damage types, I think, is really expectable. You know, you can run a third for extra crit, but that's a little bit hard for your tank depending on the situation. Sometimes it's easy for them to do because they don't have anything to do. Sometimes it's hard. They have a lot of stuff to do. It's kind of up to you, and it can be a little bit flexible there. ADD, Archdruid Deverick. So this is just a way of helping keep up that same debuff that we put on our enemies as the Colossus does, major vulnerability. And then we have, of course, Winter's Embrace. Somebody needs to be running Winter's Embrace, and the reason for that is for Expansive Frostcloak. It used to be ran by healers. It no longer needs to be. And honestly, the Winter's Embrace whole skill line really just screams tank. And so it makes sense for one of the tanks. Now, you could put it on the main tank. They could both be running it. Doesn't really matter. But one of the tanks needs to be running it, and they also need to be running Expansive Frostcloak in an ideal situation. And then after that, we have Gravelord because we're also running a Colossus on this tank. For our healers, guys, we've got Roaring Opportunist and Jorvold's Guidance. Kind of our go-to. Usually put Jorvold's on your body. Roaring Opportunist, you can just back bar, and then that can leave your front bar open to run something else, and there's several really good options. Enlivening Overflow is one of the CP that you're going to run with this. The other healer is going to run from the brink. Green Balance is really the only skill line we want to run here, and the reason for that is the last passive in the skill line provides us with minor toughness for our group whenever we heal people, increasing their health by 10%. It's absolutely huge, really great for survivability. So you want one of your healers in Green Balance. I just happen to say, hey, throw it on this particular healer. For our other healer, SPC and PA. Again, you know, Powerful Assault is a great set. Used to be ran by our off tank, but now I don't really think there's a compelling reason to run Pillager's Prophet anymore. I don't think the ulti gen it provides is that much. And honestly, in a lot of PUG groups, especially now, like since it is so lackluster, it's probably not even worth running because so many groups just sit with too much ulti or 500 ult and never cast anything. So more ult's not going to help. So Powerful Assault is the way to go. And you know what? The healer's already double procking Vigor anyways, so it's going to work really well to keep that buff up on the group. And then they're running Symphony of Blades for a little bit of sustain and from the brink as we talked about. And then they are also running Gravelord, and that's for that Colossus there. So you have another option for a Colossus. Our DPS, we're saying flexible, whatever they want to run. This is kind of the PUG setup here. And then we note that if you can get somebody in Zen's Redress, that needs to be a dot build, or at least somewhat a dot build. It's probably a different, not a beam build most likely. Although in theory, technically, maybe you can. It just really depends on how you set it up. If you can, you want an Atronach Ultimate, and you want that for the Major Berserk that you get from the synergy from that. Just a really nice to have. And if you can get an extra Colo on a DPS, it's probably not a bad idea in a PUG. Obviously, we've got a lot of places that we're sourcing Colossus from for that major vuln, but it's just to try to have up a really good, high up times. And I'm sorry, our Rojo healer is also running Horn as well. So we basically have 2 Horns, 2 Colos on our primary supports. And then if you can get an Atronach from somebody else, absolutely want it. And you might be in a situation where maybe none of your supports, you don't have enough Colos, and maybe more DPS are running it. Whatever works for your group. Just get what you can, I suppose, at that point. All right, now for a meta-ish setup, okay? So none of these are perfect, guys. These are generic setups. There's always going to be better things you can do, but let's just walk through it. Main tank, Ellie, we already talked about. Turning Tide, we want to make sure that we have that major vulnerability up, and as we look through everything else, we're going to see that we're running not as many Colos on this setup, so hopefully our main tank can help us keep that up. Turning Tide, you have to be hit to proc it while blocking, and then you can proc it on a particular target. You could also swap this out with a set on, we'll see in a second, Crimson Oath on our off tank if your off tank is holding the priority target. Again, beside some of the Atros, anywhere where the ads are the biggest problem. For our monster set, they have a flexibility here. They can run a survival set, whatever they need, because we shouldn't need the penetration. We'll go over that in a second. If you do need the penetration, obviously, Tremor Scale will go here. Our main tank is running a Colossus, and in this situation, they are ulting every time they get it up, which should be about once every 30 seconds. You can keep up incredibly good ultimate uptimes, that major vulnerability, by just having your main tank do that. They don't need to sweat it out. They don't need to, if they can run trample, it's a good idea for that major heroism, but you don't need to do it in this particular setup. They're also running Soldier of the Apocrypha. The reason for that is because they're providing the group with someone ideally would be running some Soldier of the Apocrypha line, because it provides the group, just by casting skills, minor evasion for everybody. Now, it used to be that this was, we had so many Arcadists in the group, we didn't have to worry about it. We always had it. Now it's not the case, and Soldier of the Apocrypha is a tanking skill line, so it makes sense for one of our tanks to run it. Doesn't actually have to be the main tank, but just anybody. Grave Lord for the Colossus there. Moving to our off tank, we have Pearlescent Ward, Crimson Oath. Crimson Oath, very easy. Just going to make sure you are debuffing targets, but as an off tank, you should be doing that anyways. Our monster set here, Baron Zadris, is a good option. It provides us, again, if we're using Elisus, going to provide us with a lot of extra ultimate generation. And the reason that we want that is because we're going to be dropping Atronox on cooldown. Whenever we have it, we just drop it, and that's going to provide us with a lot more major force, major berserk, which is increase our damage done by 10%. It's really good for group damage overall. For skill lines, we have Daedric Summoning, Winter's Embrace, and Siphoning here. Again, Winter's Embrace, you could flex this out, swap it with Soldier on the main tank. And actually, in one of my groups, I'm doing this right now, because as the off tank beside hard mode, you really take a lot of damage, and I need a little bit more survivability, and that's just kind of how it is working out. And then Siphoning skill line, we're chugging potions, guys. You can take the reduced potion cooldown on your jewelry if you want, ×3, and then you're chugging potions every 20 seconds. Probably want to get some cheaper potions if you're doing that. It's going to get really expensive. But Siphoning skill line, every time we drink a potion, we get 30 ultimate. So that helps us drop those Atros on cooldown. If you're not in super sweaty content and you're not running out of resources, I'd probably use trash bots for that. Honestly, that's what I'll be doing, at least in most situations. For our healers, our kite healer here, guys, we're going to find some new information about kite healers. Rojo. So again, Jorval's Guidance on our body. Roaring Opportunist is going to be what we're going to heavy attack with on our back bar. Then we're running Nazare, and Nazare, the whole point of that is to extend debuffs on our targets. So our main tank is going to Colo whenever they get it, and then when we see them Colo as this healer, we're going to hit our horn to extend it. And if that works out right, 250 ultimate for the horn, with the duration of a Colossus, we basically end up every 30 seconds, our main tank is Colossusing. Here I called it a kite healer, is horning, and that'll provide us with basically 100% uptime. We're only using horn for the resource that we get from that, because it increases all of our max resources, which increases our damage, and that's why we're using horn. We're not worried about the major force here at all. They're running Enlivening, Green Balance, Living Death, and Siphoning. Why those three skill lines? Green Balance, we're running that because reasons we already talked about. Living Death will help generate ultimate whenever you consume a corpse. So guys, I'll have builds out on these particular setups. I actually already do have one for a Warden if you're looking for it and what you can slot, but you want to be consuming corpses to generate that ultimate. And then Siphoning. Again, we're chugging potions for that extra ulti generation. You don't have to do that. I just want to point that out. You don't have to do it, but if you want something a little bit more optimal, you want to make sure you have really good uptimes, that's what you'd want to do here. For our group healer in this case, and guys, these could be either way, really, but I think group healer makes sense here. SPC, we're used to running it, no big deal. Powerful Assault, again, we've already talked about it. Symphony of Blades, again, we've already talked about it. But here, we're running Glyphic of the Tides. So we're running for the brink, running Curative Rune Forms, either our Shadow skill line or our Restoration, and then Siphoning. I'm sorry, I said Restoration. It's Restoring Light. Restoring Light from the Templar skill line, or Shadow from the Nightblade. Okay, so what are we doing here? This is a different setup, right? And it's going to get even more different here in a second. So Curative Rune Forms. It's a really good skill line, right, just for heals in general, but we're running it so we can run Glyphic of the Tides. And we are going to, again, drop this on cooldown whenever we can. We're running either Shadow or Restoring Light, and the reason for that is because both of these skill lines have a crucial buff that we need, okay? Either one of them. So we need some source of minor intellect and minor endurance for most of our groups, which are minor recoveries. The ones you get major recoveries from drinking potions, and the minor ones usually we would get from either a Nightblade's Path or from a Templar, their Radiant Aura, which lasts for like 60 seconds. So either one of those is really good. Path provides major expedition, which is speed, which can be nice, can be annoying. It also heals so that's nice, but you have to cast it a lot more often. Also, the Shadow skill line has a lot of recoveries in it. You get an extra 15% of recoveries, so that makes it really easy to sustain. The Restoring Light has other passives as well, extra healing. You have some good heals in there also. A lot to recommend it. It's 6 one way, half dozen the other, whatever you would prefer. One is probably better in some situations, one's probably better in other situations. Really up to you. What do you like? I personally, I love my Night Blades, but it's either way. And then our third one, siphoning, because we're potion chugging. Okay, so the idea here is that we have a lot of ways of generating ultimate, and then we're just dropping those glyphic of the tides on cooldown to provide both a bunch of healing. It lasts for 15 seconds. Also provides, when it's full health, major protection, which is huge. And so this kind of replaces barrier spam basically. And then the other thing is it provides extra weapon and spell damage, a couple hundred, so more damage, and that's why we like it here. For our DPS, hopefully we have someone in Zen's Redress. The other set and what else they run, that's based on them. They have to know their own setup. I'll have a build out for that soon. I just haven't gotten to it yet, guys. I'm trying. I'm working as hard as I can, as fast as I can. And then the rest of the DPS are all parse DPS, okay? And I recommend Herald of the Tomb, Assassination, Adric Spear. Adric Spear, you can, again, as we mentioned, like swap out. You just might want to swap out one of your sets. Basically, you'd have to get rid of Turning Tide. Turning Tide is just there. You technically don't need it if things go really well, but it's just there to help cover things, so you might put it in there. If you did that, you could drop Baron Zadras at Archdruid Deverick instead. You get a little bit less colo uptime, but you make sure you have better major vulnerability uptimes. A little bit of options for you there. It depends on your particular group and what you guys want to run, how things are going. Okay, now to the sweatiest setup here that's kind of generically useful. All right, so on our main tank, Ellie, Crimson, we've already seen those. Flex for the monster set. If you need more major vuln, maybe you drop in Archdruid Deverick here. Earth and Heart, Soldier of the Apocrypha, Gravelord, all for reasons we've already talked about. On our OT here, Pearlescent Ward, running PA on this person, and the reason for that, we'll see we're running MK on our healer, but PA on the off tank here. Spalder of Ruin, this is going to be a little bit harder for them to keep up because it does reduce their recoveries, something that would be totally okay to drop, especially on the off tank, depending on how hard their job is. It might make a lot of sense to drop this. And then, guys, a new setup you can run. Okay, this is all credit to Luna here. Potentates. You can run Potentates. What it does, for those who don't know, it's a 3-piece set for PvP areas that drops the cost of your ultimate by 15%. Now, what happens is you can essentially backbar this, and so you cast your ult on your backbar, and it's 15% cheaper. That allows us to drop even more Atronachs. We're going to be dropping Atronachs on cooldown. Absolutely going to be ridiculous with this. We're running Daedric summoning here so that we can obviously have access to that Atro. We already talked about that. Winter's Embrace and Siphoning. And again, you could swap out Soldier of the Apocrypha and Winter's Embrace on the main tank and off tank, depending on your situation, and probably a few other things. You could also switch Siphoning out if you needed it for some other skill line here. You would just generate a little bit less ultimate. Now, this is going to be absolutely crazy. You're just going to be dropping Atros like nobody's business. On our healers, another interesting, really cool setup here. So, Rojo, Jorvold's Guidance on the front, Roaring Opportunist on your back bar. Jorvold's on your body. Nazare, again, to extend the Colossus. Running Enlivening. Master's Resto here for reasons we've already talked about. We're running Green Balance, Living Death, Siphoning, again, for reasons we've kind of already talked about. And then for our group healer, SPC, I recommend, generally speaking, Martial Knowledge. Now, Martial Knowledge is a single target, and you have to have your stand below 50% to increase the damage done on a target, and you have to be light attack weaving. You might be in an AoE fight. You might be in a situation where the main tank can't really run PA very well. So in that situation, you put PA on this SBC healer and let them run it, and then you've got a flex spot on your off tank to run whatever you need up there. And then you're going to run Spalder of Ruin here. Now, you're doing the exact same thing because you can't run a monster set and Spalder of the Ruin, and I think Spalder of Ruin on this healer makes the most sense, even if you're only going to have one Spalder in group. What you actually want to do, if you want to make sure it's only covering your DPS, is when you get your group together, kick out all your supports except for your parse DDs, and then it'll make sure it'll choose them preferentially. Okay, that's how Spalder apparently works, with choosing those the DDs, and then you re-invite your tanks and your healers back in, and then you're good to go. It's really annoying, but that's actually how you get Spalder to proc on the right number of people. You're running Glyphic of the Tides here still, From the Brink, Curative Rune Forms, all the same stuff here as far as what everything else that we're running. So basically what you're going to do with this setup is you're going to have front bar SPC, back bar potentates. Of course, you'll always have your spalder on, and then you'll have a 5-piece always active of MK or PA so that you can keep that procced, okay? And you could do other things there, but I think that probably makes some of the most sense depending on how you set up your bars and everything else. Our DPS, we want a Zen's DPS, and then we're just running Herald of the Tome, Assassination, Adric Spear, and all of our DPS there, and you're good to go. Remember, we have a flex spot up there on our tank. If we're not running MK, we can still run EC, and then we could run Herald of the Tome, Assassination, and a flex spot there. It doesn't have to be Adric. You don't have to get extra critical there, and that can allow even a fairly optimized group to have a little bit of flexibility for your DPS because there might be something they like to run instead. You might have reasons for it, what have you. All right, and guys, I think that's it. I think we've covered everything. I know that was a lot. I know it's a lot to go over, but I think we're good here. So let me know if you have any questions. You can drop them in the comments below, guys, but something really complicated, you really want to get into this, you want to share maybe the link to this copy of like, hey, what I came up with, come by the Discord, guys. We have help channels there, and it's going to be a lot easier to go over really in-depth questions in the Discord, and other people can help out and what have you. If you have a short, quick question, if I missed something, drop it down in the comments below, and we can chat about it there. Anyways, thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.